Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today, we have the newly released Tier 9 Premium American Battleship, the Illinois. Now, the Illinois here is quite the different looking Iowa class. If you notice, first off, she has 4 guns per turret. And those guns are, well, rather quite small, because they are in fact the same 8-inch guns you find on the Des Moines. And she gets 4 per turret and 3 turrets for 12 Des Moines guns overall on an Iowa hull. This thing looks crazy. It looks very odd if you're used to staring at Iowas in game, but believe it or not, this was an actual real design for, well, what to do with the unfinished Illinois hull after World War II. If you guys don't know, there were 2 more Iowa-class battleships being built, Illinois and Kentucky. They were both, well, their hulls were both almost completed at the end of the war. Well, the Kentucky actually had her bow removed and given to the Wisconsin to repair the Wisconsin's bow after little whoopsies that Wisconsin has. So the Wisconsin is technically the whiskey, but, you know, that's another story for another day. Now, as far as the Illinois hull goes, this was one of the actual proposed plans to, well, convert her into this weird battleship cruiser gun platform after the war. But it never happened. However, in Warships, it did, and here we have the Illinois. She is available for 51,000 Research Bureau points, which is quite a bit. You'll have to reset a line 4 times if you have the boost going, 5 times if not. It is quite the investment in either time and or money. Money being the way you can, of course, convert ship XP to free XP and then grind through the lines like that. So is it worth the grind? That is what we are going to try and answer for you guys today. We're going to look over her stats and armor and port, then have a gameplay review section where I will talk about my experiences with the Illinois. So let's go ahead and take a look at her. But first, a big thank you to this channel's Patreons. I am not a CC, nor supported by, nor affiliated with Wargaming in any way, shape, or form, so I have to grind or buy these ships when they do come out, and the generous donations from this channel's Patreons make that much more easier and in fact possible to do. Patreon is the best way to support the channel besides just watching the videos and streams, so big shout out to those guys whose names should be appearing or should have already appeared up on screen. By the way, as always, art department absolutely knocked it out of the park here. The ship looks great. I just love the way that the Iowa class looks like. Man, U.S. Navy can design a battleship. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at her. Oh, if you are wondering, this is the perma-camo that you get with the ship. That's the main. That's the alternate scheme. As far as economic bonuses go, it does have the standard Tier 9 bonus. It is a full-on premium ship, so you do get the, of course, Tier 9 premium built-in economy as well. Armor, very similar to an Iowa with a couple of exceptions. So 32 bow deck, 38 main deck, 38 upper armor belt, 32 rear, 32 stern, but the torpedo bulges are 32 instead of, if I could grab the Missouri here, instead of 38. So you will get, and I did notice this as I was playing, you will get a couple more bites around here, where on the Missouri and the Iowa it would just bounce or, you know, be torpedo protection damage. But apparently not on the Illinois. You seem to get a lot more bites here from ships that have those high velocity AP shells like Soviet battleships and the like. But the differences don't stop just there, because the Citadel is well below the waterline. So you ain't citadeling this thing from close range. For comparison, there's the Missouri, whose Citadel is at the waterline, but the Illinois is submerged. So that right there is pretty promising for close-in engagements. Here comes the downside. You have 10,000 less HP on the Illinois than you do on the Iowa/Missouri, who has 78,000 HP. They really just cut 10,000 and change HP off of the Illinois. So yeah, 25% torpedo damage reduction. So these 12 8-inch guns, 230mm guns, reload in 9 seconds base. They have a 180 time of 30 seconds. Maximum dispersion 18.5 kilometers of 203 meters. The HE shells do a maximum damage of 2,800, and they have a 14% chance of causing a fire on the target. They can pin 34mm base, so there's no need for IFHE. And those shells come out the tubes at 823 meters a second. And the AP shells do a maximum damage of 5,000 and come out the tubes at 762 meters a second, and they do have the improved AP pin angles of the Des Moines. You get 20 of the American secondary guns, the standard 127mm 5-inch guns. They reload in 6 seconds, have a maximum range of 7 kilometers base, 1,800 maximum damage, 5% fire chance, 21mm of HE pin, and 792 meters second initial velocity. Standard American secondaries. At one point she did have improved secondaries, but that has since been, well, done away with. Airstrike, she does get 2 charges of the ASW aircraft. For her AA, she has 48 20mm Oerlikons. She has 16x2 76mm guns. She has the 20 127mm guns, 5-inch guns, acting as AA as well. The main battery does not count towards AA. For maneuverability, max speed of 33 knots, turning circle radius of 930 meters, and rudder shift time of 17.2 seconds. Consumables is 15.9 kilometers base. For her consumables, you get the U.S. Battleship Hill and the U.S. Damage Con. So the Hill regens 449 HP per second. Now keep in mind, this is with a ship that has 10,000 less HP, so even though it sounds like less, it's still the American Battleship Hill. Runs for 28 seconds and reloads in 80 seconds. 4 charges base. For the Damage Con, American Damage Con, 20-second runtime, 80 seconds reload. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and slap my commander and module build back on her, because we did play this on stream last night quite a bit. And I'll meet you guys right back here. Alright, so with the commander build, I went with the normal battleship tank build, because why not? There's not really much else I would do different here, because you're still... The main difference is the guns, and of course the the squishier hull, because that's 10,000 less HP, so you'd want to build into survivability anyway, so yeah. So I went with preventive maintenance to decrease the chance of the guns being knocked out by 30%, along with the steering gears and the engine. I went with grease the gears, which with using Halsey is a 25% boost to the 180 time of the guns. So it's nice to have the guns whipping around as fast as you can. Of course, Adrenaline Rush 2, so when you do lose HP, you get a buff to your reload time. Then I went with Emergency Repair Expert because, well, another heal is really nice, and 10% to the runtime of the heal and to the damage con is also really nice as well. Come back down and grab the concealment for another 10% boost to your ship's concealment rate. Come back down again and grab fire prevention. That way you can only have 3 fires on your ship, and there's a 10% boost to your fire resistance. Come back up and go ahead and grab Basics of Survivability and get your module restoration, fire extinguishing, and flooding recovery times buffed by 15%. For the modules, I went with main armaments mod 1 to give us a 20% buff to the chance of the turrets becoming incapacitated, a 50% buff to their survivability, and a 20% buff to their repair time. Then I went with Damage Con mod 1 because fires suck. This gives us a negative 5% chance to the chance of fires happening and a negative 3% chance to the chances of flooding happening. Now, here, there's honestly not really a good choice here because main battery mod 1, more turret traverse. Woo, my turret's already turned in 24 seconds. Secondary battery mod 1, secondaries aren't worth building into. AA gun mod 1, why? Artillery platform mod 1 gives you more range. That's, I mean, you're going to actually need that. We'll talk about that in the gameplay section. So, Damage Con mod 2, because fires suck. This gives us a 15% buff to our fire and flooding recovery time. Concealment mod 1 for another 10% buff to our ship's concealment. And then this is where this is up to you. I chose Artillery Plattering mod 2 because it's a special American battleship module. It gives us an 11% buff to our dispersion. You can take main battery mod 3 to get a 12% buff to your reload time if you want to go for maximum DACA. But from my experience, I'd rather have most of my shells land. And with this module right here, you will have most of your shells landing on target. But again, it's up to you if you want to put your trust in the I want to throw more crap at the wall. That's entirely up to you. So pick one. Okay, so now the guns, the reload time hasn't changed. It's still 9 seconds. The dispersion is still 230 meters, but we're out to 21.4 kilometers. So that essentially means under 20 kilometers you have under 100 meters of, under 200 meters of dispersion, which is pretty decent. Consumables now down to 12.8 kilometers. Maneuverability is up to 34 knots with the speed flag. The heal is now doing 539 HP per second and is running for 30.8 seconds now. The damage con is running for 22 seconds now with the build. I believe that is everything covered here. So I'll go ahead and meet you guys in a voiceover review of the Illinois, and we'll take a step away from my turbojet fans here and discuss the Illinois. Hey guys, voiceover Mountbatten here without the PC fans. So the Illinois. Out of the gate, this is not going to be a competitive ship. I mean, maybe in ranked, if someone's, a dodo enough to show you broadside. You do have the amazing Des Moines AP. It might make a big impact there, but it's a goofy ship. Let's be clear about that here. I don't see this becoming a super meta ship by any stretch of the imagination. It's a battleship with cruiser guns, You do have battleship armor, battleship HP, although low battleship HP for the tier. But, yeah, I mean, it's goofy. And the Incomparable's goofy, and I love the Incomparable. But what about the Illinois? So, throughout last night's stream, you can go check out that VOD on either here at YouTube or over on Twitch. Pick your poison. You can see me constantly run into the main enemy of this ship, which is the current meta. The current meta is very passive. It's very long range. There's mini matches like we had last night where maybe only one or two ships are even within your main battery gun range for a good chunk of the match. And that's typically where a lot of matches start and stop nowadays. So, normally cruisers can get by this by their DPM and by their ability to, well, they're fast, they're nimble, nimbler than battleships, or they have the range or the shell ballistics to where they can keep up with that. Well, the Illinois has the Des Moines shell ballistics. Those shells that, on the way to the target, they have to stop and catch a connecting flight to get there because it takes them so long to get there. And at range, that's quite miserable to try and use. Because we're talking about like a 16-second flight time, I believe, at maximum range with the Illinois. That is a lot of time for that target ship to move, change speed, slightly tap A or slightly tap D. And that's the situation you're being a lot of times, at least from my experience. Like, we literally played, I think 8 or 9 games on stream with this thing last night, and 7 of the games were those types of games. And the one you're watching right now was more mid-range, which, when that happens, the ship really does start to come into its own. Because then you are in a battleship hull with guns that can DACA. Now, it is a 9-second reload, but you do have 12 guns, right? Like, you got 12 Des Moines guns, right? Like, that's a lot of stuff being thrown down range every 9 seconds. And you do have a 14% fire chance on these guns, too. Which means you're more than capable of just melting anything that dare come near you in those 13, 14-ish kilometers around your ship. After that, the flight time gets a little... Granted, if you are a Des Moines player, you don't care. You know what to do there. And once you do get used to having to lead ships by that far, it's not really hard to land shells at like 16, 17, 18 kilometers. But when you start getting out to like 19, 20, that's a lot more painful. Unless it's a battleship, obviously. So that's the main hurdle you're going to have to overcome in this ship, is the shell ballistics versus the engagement ranges at current high tier gameplay. And do take into account too, this is a tier 9 ship, and or at least a video this week talking about how Tier 9 has been turned from a more enjoyable tier to a not so enjoyable tier thanks to super ships. And yeah, that does of course happen here. You're a Tier 9 battleship with Tier 8 battleship HP going up against super battleships that have 20-inch guns that can more than vibe check you, even through your angled armor thanks to their 20-inch guns. So that is something that's a little rough for the Illinois. And again, this is a ship that you will have to be resetting and regrinding lines in order to get. Now, again, when those situations can happen to where you can't get in close, when you have islands to lob your shells over, it is really, really giggle-inducing to be in a battleship and be lobbing shells over an island that you're pretty much parked right next to, like an American cruiser. And definitely, when this thing can get in a good spot, instead of having to deal with a Des Moines, where you can just kind of laugh and overmatch it with a lot of the caliber guns that you have at that tier, it's a bit harder to dislodge than a Des Moines or a Salem because, well, it's got battleship armor. So it can hold pretty darn well, if there's no submarines around, that is, obviously. But yeah, it's essentially a tankier, slower, tougher Des Moines if you really want to boil it down, with 12 guns. How often can you use those 12 guns? Well, from the bow end, not that much. You do have to show a fair amount of skin to get the third turret on target. It's not like German bad, but with the Iowa's armor, yeah. But when you're kiting, it's a bit better there. Can pretty comfortably shoot over her shoulder, and I put that to great use in the match you should be watching in the background right now. And I mean, yeah, 12 Des Moines shells, that's a lot to contend with. Again, with that 14% fire chance with 12 shells, I wasn't really having too much trouble setting fires. Most of your damage in this thing is going to come from fires, unless you are in a close-in situation where, you know, you're just ripping it with a Des Moines AP and ships are showing you broadside. And that's really where the ship shines. Boy, I love tongue twisters. When you can get in those situations or those maps that have a lot of island cover, that you can get close to the cap and you can, you know, do cruiser things in a battleship hull. And that's something you have to remember too. You may be in a battleship, it might feel like a battleship, but you have cruiser guns. So you can deal with DDs quite well because you're throwing 8 Des Moines shells into their sides every 9 seconds. So if most of those shells connect, which with my experience, with at least with the dispersion model on, they did, you know, you're ripping DDs for like almost a third of their HP sometimes, especially if you get really lucky with the dispersion roll. So there is that. It's very good for that. And it is a Tier 9 ship. It does have the Tier 9 premium economy. And given that it is so good at starting fires, that is one upside to the super ships. Those are calculated as Tier 11 in the game's reward system. So you do get quite a bit of an economic boost for doing damage to them. So you do have that upside. But the big question is it worth resetting a line 4 or 5 times to get, or investing the money to convert the XP? I gotta say, I don't think it's worth it. At least not right away. Now, if you're a player that, you know, you've got the Ohio already, you've got the Paulo Emilio, you've got the Siegfried, you got all the other good Research Bureau ships. If you just want a goofy boat, yeah, it's a good goofy boat. You know, if that's your mindset of, this is a goofy ship, this ship is stupid, it's a nice what-if ship, sure, absolutely. I think it's worth it for the goofiness and for the giggles, especially if you get 3 of them together. Then you're just talking about bullying people. But if you want a ship that's like competitive, that you can use in random battles, and in ranked, and in clan battles, and in COTS, and in whatever tournament you want to take part in, you want to get an Ohio. You don't want to get this thing. But as a goofy ship, fine. Overall, I would give it a 7 out of 10. If the meta wasn't so long range, it would be an 8 out of 10. But given what the meta is, it's a solid 7. If the meta somehow shifts back to getting closer in and more brawly type of gameplay, sure, I'd bump it up to an 8. But right now, it's a 7. And it's really unfortunate because it's a neat ship. It's a nice chunk of history. It's a nice what-if ship. I know they'd like to do paper ships a lot, but it's really interesting when you dig into the history of this design and stuff, and I think it's neat that it gets to come to life in game. Honestly, this would have been a great coal ship. It's kind of unfortunate that it got stuck in the research bureau. If it was a coal ship, that probably would actually increase it to an 8 as well, because that's a lot easier to acquire than obviously regrinding a line 5 times. So, guys, this is my 2 cents on the Illinois. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 50,000 subscribers, thanks to you guys, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.